I always believed families broke slowly. A crack here, a misunderstanding there, small fractures that deepened over years. I never imagined mine would split in a single night, clean and violent, like a glass dropped from too high. My name is Isabella Crane, and until 3 months ago, I honestly thought my family loved me. That illusion ended the night my grandfather died. Grandpa Harrison had been the anchor of the Crane family. Old money proud, ruthlessly intelligent, and stubborn enough to outlive every illness the doctors predicted. He built our family empire from nothing, a chain of boutique hotels stretching across the coast, and he ruled over us with a mixture of affection and iron discipline. Everyone expected his fortune to go to my father, Richard. Everyone expected responsibility to fall to my older sister, Evelyn, the golden child. And everyone expected me to stay where I'd always been, the quiet one, that artistic disappointment, the daughter who wasn't cut out for business. That's why the reading of the will felt like a blade pressed to my throat. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and dust. My mother sat stiffly beside my father, her hand resting on his arm as if she could physically hold his temper in place. Evelyn perched opposite me, legs crossed, phone in hand, pretending she wasn't checking her reflection in the black screen. The attorney cleared his throat. And then he said the words that changed everything. Harrison Crane leaves the majority of his estate, including Crane Harbor Resorts, to his granddaughter, Isabella Crane. The room went dead silent. I didn't breathe. My mother's hand slipped from my father's arm. Evelyn blinked, slowly, like she'd misheard. My father finally spoke, his voice tight and cracking. "Excuse me? That must be a mistake." But it wasn't. The attorney handed me a sealed envelope, my name written in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was just one line. "Take what they never believed you deserved. HC." My stomach dropped. My pulse hammered painfully against my skin. My grandfather had known. He had always known. I looked up, and that's when it started. My father's face twisted with disbelief, and something worse. My mother's lips tightened into a thin, artificial smile. And Evelyn looked like someone had ripped the sun out of her sky. "You," she whispered, voice trembling with rage. "You get everything? You? That's impossible." It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Because she wasn't asking why Grandpa chose me. She was asking how someone like me could ever be chosen. "Grandpa made his decision," I said quietly. Evelyn stood up, so fast her chair slammed into the wall. "No. Someone manipulated him. You must have done something. He would never choose you over me." My father didn't defend me. He didn't defend anyone. He stared at the table like the will had personally insulted him. "When was this written?" he demanded. The attorney flipped through documents. 3 months ago. 3 months ago, when Grandpa's health began to decline. 3 months ago, when he started requesting to see me more often. 3 months ago, when Evelyn stopped visiting entirely because she didn't have time. The truth hit me with a strange, painful clarity. He hadn't chosen me out of favoritism. He'd chosen me out of disappointment in them. But my family didn't see it that way. They saw betrayal. They saw a threat. From that moment, they treated me like one. My phone buzzed with messages that night from relatives, from cousins I barely spoke to, from people pretending to check on me. But the tone was all the same. "You don't deserve it. You're not ready. This must be a misunderstanding. You should give it back." Even my mother called me just before midnight. Her voice was soft, controlled. Too controlled. "Isabella, sweetheart," she began, "you know your grandfather wasn't well. His mind wasn't stable. Your father has run the company for years. It only makes sense." "Mom," I cut in, "the will is legal." Her tone sharpened immediately. "It is not your place to challenge this family. Not my place. Even when I was the heir." I hung up on her for the first time in my life. But the worst came the next morning. I walked into Crane Harbor's headquarters with the weight of 1,000 eyes on me. Everyone whispered as I passed. Some with curiosity, some with sympathy, some with envy. But one gaze felt like a knife at my back. Evelyn. She was waiting outside the boardroom, arms folded, a cold, poisonous smile spreading across her face. "Enjoy it while you can," she said softly, "because I'm going to find out what you did. And when I do, everything you've been handed will crumble." "I didn't do anything," I replied. She leaned close, her perfume sweet and suffocating. "That's the difference between us, Isabella. You follow rules. I rewrite them." She walked away, heels clicking like the ticking of a countdown clock. I stood there, the weight of the will in my hands, realizing something I should have understood from the start. Grandpa didn't just leave me a fortune. He left me a war. And it was only just beginning. The days after the will reading were suffocating. Crane Harbor felt like a house of glass. Everyone watching, judging, waiting for me to falter. My father avoided my gaze entirely, retreating behind stacks of legal papers and whispered phone calls. Evelyn? She had become a predator in heels, stalking the corridors with quiet fury, smiling at colleagues as if we shared some private joke. I spent the first morning alone in Grandpa Harrison's old study, sifting through files and journals he had left behind. Every document, every ledger, every handwritten note seemed to pulse with secrets he had kept, secrets he trusted me enough to inherit. Among the journals, one entry caught my eye. "The family you know is only half the truth. Keep your wits, Isabella, and never trust appearances. H.C." I pressed my hand to my chest. Grandpa had prepared me, left me tools to survive the storm. But what storm? My first step was subtle reconnaissance. I needed to understand my family, the people who had called themselves mine. At the office, Evelyn's manipulation began immediately. She whispered to the senior managers, weaving subtle doubts. "Isabella? She's inexperienced," she'd murmur. "Are you sure she understands the hotel operations?" She didn't have to lie. I was the quiet one, the overlooked one. Her insinuations alone were enough. I began observing her, cataloging patterns. Her charm, her timing, the way she planted seeds of doubt without ever seeming malicious. She had spent her life mastering the art of subtle control. But every control has a weakness. Evelyn's thirst for recognition was insatiable. She needed approval like air. And she underestimated me. She assumed because I followed the rules I couldn't think strategically. That arrogance would be my advantage. That evening, I accessed Grandpa's personal files, his private financial statements, meeting notes, letters from lawyers. Every detail was precise, every trust mapped. And hidden among them, I found the first piece of leverage, a series of letters from Evelyn, long before the will was amended, hinting at bribery attempts to influence Grandpa's decision through subtle threats. My pulse quickened. She had tried to control the inheritance even before it was hers to claim. And I now held proof. But proof alone was dangerous. Confronting Evelyn now would be like lighting a match in a powder room. I needed patience. That night, I returned to my apartment and began compiling a digital archive. Each letter, email, and note copied, cross-referenced, and time-stamped. This wasn't just preparation, it was a shield and a weapon. The next day, Evelyn confronted me in the cafeteria. Her smile was perfect, predatory. "I see you've started snooping," she said lightly, twirling a fork in her salad. "I'm learning," I said evenly, not giving her the satisfaction of fear. She leaned close, whispering just above a polite tone. "Careful, Isabella. You don't want to find things you can't handle." I smiled back, hiding the thrill of having found exactly what she thought she had hidden. "I handle more than you think." Her eyes flickered, a fraction of uncertainty, and I knew then that the game had begun. That evening, I reached out to a trusted family friend, Margaret Fielding, a former executive who had left the company under mysterious circumstances. Over coffee, she confirmed what my instincts had whispered. Evelyn had been manipulating the board for years, quietly erasing evidence of her failures while exaggerating my perceived weaknesses. "Your grandfather didn't make a mistake," Margaret said. "He chose the one who could see the truth, you." Her words were a lifeline. Finally, I understood. This wasn't just a battle over money. It was a war over perception, power, and legacy. With renewed determination, I returned home, and opened Grandpa's final letter to me again. Trust actions, not words. The shadows hold what light cannot see. I realized what he had meant. To survive, I would have to move through the shadows of my own family, navigating deception and betrayal without showing fear. And I would, because Grandpa hadn't just left me a fortune. He had left me the knowledge to reclaim it. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a plan. Every smile I gave, every word I spoke, every gesture was calculated. Evelyn would not see it coming. The game had shifted, and the first move was already in motion. The morning after I finalized my notes and archived every shred of evidence, Crane Harbor felt different. Not physically, of course. The marble floors still gleamed, the staff still moved in quiet, precise patterns, but the air itself was heavier, charged. Like the house itself was bracing for the storm that I was about to unleash. I had spent the night reviewing every letter, every ledger, every photograph my grandfather had left. Evelyn had made her moves, yes, but she hadn't anticipated someone would counter with intelligence rather than fear. And that someone was me. At the office, I resumed my public persona, calm, polite, even submissive. I smiled at colleagues, answered emails with patience, and nodded at board members in meetings. But every glance, every whisper was catalogued in my mind. Evelyn was predictable. Her charm was her weapon, but it always followed the same pattern. First the compliments, then the subtle digs, then the gaslighting. I had observed it for weeks, and now I knew exactly how to counter it. She approached me mid-morning, leaning casually against the doorframe of my office. "Settling in nicely?" she asked, voice smooth as silk. "Perfectly," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You know, Isabella, fortune and family don't always mix well. People envy what they cannot control." I let the words hang. Then, very softly, "And yet, control is only as strong as the truth that backs it." Her composure faltered, just slightly, and I filed that away for later. That evening, I visited the hidden archive in the basement, a place my grandfather had insisted I keep locked, only accessible to me. Among the piles of letters and financial records, I found something I hadn't expected, a set of ledgers documenting secret transfers of company funds to accounts controlled by Evelyn, with assistance from my father. The entries were meticulous, coded, and damning. I photographed every page, cataloged each transaction, and backed up the files to a secure server. My heartbeat quickened. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was evidence of manipulation, greed, and possibly fraud that I started formulating a plan. Evelyn had always relied on fear and appearances to dominate the family. I would use proof, strategy, and patience. I reached out to Margaret Fielding again. She had insight, and her loyalty was unquestionable. I also contacted Harold, my grandfather's old executive assistant, who had quietly monitored every unusual move within the company. Together, we began cross-referencing financial records, emails, and travel logs. It was painstaking work, but every anomaly we found strengthened my position. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued her campaign in the open. She flattered board members, whispered doubts, and even attempted to plant incriminating stories about me. But I was ready. I had anticipated every maneuver. And now, every deception she attempted was documented. 2 weeks later, Evelyn confronted me in the private lounge. The space was dim, the light casting long shadows over the leather chairs. She looked calm, but her eyes betrayed her agitation. "You're persistent," she said. "But persistence alone won't win you anything." "I never said it would," I replied. "Strategy wins." She laughed, a brittle sound that revealed the cracks in her armor. "And what is your strategy, Isabella? You're the quiet one, the overlooked one. You have no experience. You're not ready." "I am ready," I said, pulling my tablet from my bag. On it, every file, every ledger, every email from your secret accounts glowed on the screen. "And now, so, is everyone else." Her smile disappeared. Her breath hitched. "You can't, this is illegal. Check the metadata. Cross-reference the ledgers. Every document is authentic. Every email traceable. The confidence in my voice was deliberate. I let it sink in. She knew, finally, that I wasn't naive. I was prepared. 2 days later, I called an emergency board meeting under the pretense of discussing company restructuring. Everyone filed into the conference room, murmurs of curiosity filling the air. Evelyn took her usual seat at the head of the table, ready to dominate. I began my presentation.
Calmly.
Methodically. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, we've all witnessed changes in our leadership and direction over the past months. What I'm about to show you is why transparency matters and why trust cannot be manipulated. Slide by slide, I revealed the financial anomalies, the secret transfers, and Evelyn's coordinated manipulations. I had prepared printed copies for every board member, plus my digital backup. No one could claim ignorance. Board members gasped. Some whispered. Evelyn tried to interject, but I anticipated her every argument. My voice remained steady.
Clear.
Calculated. By the end of the meeting, the room was electric. Evelyn's power crumbled before the board, her influence exposed. She tried to salvage the situation with charm, with pleas, with indignation, but it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. I turned to my father. His face was pale. For once, he looked uncertain. Isabella.
I
never. You didn't protect me either, I said softly. But that doesn't matter now. Truth matters. Evelyn slumped in her chair, silent, her golden facade shattered. She realized fully, finally, that she had underestimated me. Weeks later, the estate and the company were under my control, and the board had begun internal investigations. Evelyn was isolated, and my father's attempts to reconcile were tentative at best. I had reclaimed what was mine, but more importantly, I had proven my strength. Alone in Grandpa Harrison's study, I looked at the letter he had left behind. Trust yourself, Isabella. The shadows only hide what is meant to be found. I smiled. He had prepared me for the storm, and I had weathered it. And as I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the harbor, feeling the wind whip through my hair, I whispered, "This family may have tried to break me, but I am Isabella Crane, and I will protect my legacy." The morning of the confrontation, Crane Harbor felt charged, electric, as if the walls themselves knew what was coming. I entered the estate, my folder of evidence clutched firmly in my hand. Every step I took was deliberate, measured. Today was not about fortune. Today was about justice. I summoned my family and the board for a private meeting under the guise of discussing future company strategy. They arrived with polite smiles, unaware that they were about to face truths they had tried to bury. Evelyn entered last, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She gave me a glance, sharp, calculating, and for a moment I almost wondered if she knew the depth of what I held. Almost. I began calmly. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "I know this isn't a typical board meeting, but I promise it will be informative for all of us." Her eyes narrowed, and she sat rigidly, pretending confidence. I placed the folder on the table and opened it. Slide after slide, page after page, I revealed the evidence I had collected over the past month. Secret ledgers, email threads, bank transfers, letters, and journals that documented years of manipulation, bribery, and deception. Every action of Evelyn and Bennett was exposed. The room went silent. Evelyn's composure faltered. My father's face drained of color. The board members leaned forward, shock evident in their eyes. "You've lied to everyone for years," I said steadily, meeting Evelyn's gaze. "You've attempted to rewrite the history of this family, to erase our father's legacy. And now it ends." Evelyn opened her mouth, but no words came. Her golden facade, built on charm and calculated deceit, crumbled before the undeniable truth. Bennett, her accomplice, tried to interject, but the documents were irrefutable. Emails verified. Ledgers cross-checked. The evidence was complete. The judge I had arranged to attend privately reviewed the files and nodded. The legal weight behind every piece of evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't just business exposed. Personal betrayals were unveiled as well. Private letters revealed her attempts to isolate me, to turn family members against each other. She had manipulated my mother subtly, convinced my father that I was unfit. "I never expected you to see through it all," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling with fear and anger. "Perhaps you underestimated me," I said, soft but firm. "Or maybe you overestimated yourself." She realized fully then. The quiet, overlooked Isabella Crane was not the same girl she had dismissed months ago. My mother's eyes filled with tears, regret, and shock. I didn't know," she whispered. "I wanted to help, but It's too late for excuses," I said gently. "Now we can fix what can be fixed, starting with the truth." By the end of the day, the board voted to reinstate the original directives of my grandfather. Evelyn was suspended pending investigation, and Bennett faced scrutiny for his part in the manipulations. The estate and company were returned under my control. The weight lifted slightly from my shoulders. The war for Crane Harbor's future was not over entirely. Legal processes and strained family ties would remain, but I had reclaimed what was mine and exposed the lies that threatened it. I returned to Grandpa Harrison's study alone, my fingers brushing over his old journals. "Trust actions, not words. Shadows reveal what is hidden," I whispered aloud, feeling the resonance of his guidance. Weeks later, the company began to stabilize under my leadership. Family dinners were quieter, tentative, strained, but honest. Evelyn remained distant, her ambitions now exposed and checked. My parents were cautious, watching and waiting, but I felt the shift in the air. Standing on the balcony overlooking the harbor, I felt the breeze against my face. The sun glinted off the water like sparks of clarity and renewal. The estate was mine to protect, not just financially, but morally, ethically. Grandpa had trusted me to preserve the family's legacy, and I would. I whispered into the wind. "Crane Harbor is my inheritance, but more than that, it is my responsibility. I am Isabella Crane, and I will ensure the truth survives, no matter the cost." The family drama, betrayal, and struggle for inheritance had reached its climax. But the story of courage, strategy, and integrity, that was mine forever.